delivering the news dealers count on for 10 years. Subscribe today and join thousands of other automotive professionals. CBT News, 10 years strong. You're watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick.
Hi everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for joining me on another edition of Inside Automotive right here at the CBT Automotive Network. The auto dealership M&A market exploded with record-setting transactions in 2021 and 2022. But what does that mean for 2023, and what does it have in store for us in this sector? You know, with the economy and some headwinds that are headed our way, it might be a different story. Will dealership values go even higher, and which brands are the most attractive? Today, we get the answers to those questions and more from Farid, Ahmad, who is the founder and CEO of DSMA, a leading dealership buy-sell firm located in Canada. So thank you so much, Farid, for joining us on the show today.
Thank you very much. We also have quite a presence now in the United States as well, Jim.
Oh, that's great. I would imagine there are groups in Canada that want to buy into the U.S. And of course, there's probably U.S. dealerships buying stores in Canada, right? So it's
correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
great. That's great. So talk to us. What are the hottest brands being asked for by buyers today?
We get multiple requests annually. So I went back and did some homework on our 2022 and 2021. And what's been consistent is luxury German brands are always high in demand. They're the pinnacle of a franchise, especially Porsche. But any brand that has a good truck line is also very coveted and will continue to be coveted, I believe. But what's been interesting in the last 2 years, how much the demand has increased for Hyundai's and Kia dealerships, which they're really coming through strong.
They really are. It's a phenomenal product. I mean, those two lines in the last 5 years have just exploded in popularity, and they're building such beautiful automobiles.
Really,
yeah,
beautiful. And they've done a really good job on their EV strategy as well, and so that's garnering a lot of interest from the consumer.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to me from your perspective there. How was the automotive M&A world in 2022 and 2021?
Wow, what a year 2022's turned out to be for DSMA. We closed on actually 75 transactions, which was a 50% increase over 2021.
Wow.
And we've also got another 51 deals slated to close in the first quarter.
51 deals in the first quarter.
That's right.
Oh my gosh.
Your question is very busy compared to 2021.
Yeah, sure. Are groups still the prominent buyers for dealerships out there? Do you mostly see many of the publicly traded companies and the large auto groups as the strong buyers?
Yes. Last year, 78% of all the transactions that we completed were established groups. Not so heavy on the public side, but absolutely on the emerging groups that you're seeing pop up. So yes, groups are. We see that trend continuing in 2023. I think the public groups, their share values really need to bounce back a bit before they're really going to jump in with both feet.
And what do you anticipate will happen to the value of dealerships in 2023? There's a lot of concern out there over that, right?
Yeah. Typically, as everybody knows, the value of a dealership's really been based upon the multiple of net earnings. Well, that's sort of the last 3 years has really created such a high level of profit for dealers.
Yeah.
That everybody's questioning, will that continue in the future?
Yeah.
So I think the value of dealerships are going to have other factors which are going to be more acute on its business. For example, we did 447 valuations last year of dealerships.
Wow.
And what we found was that other factors such as location of a dealership, whether or not it's an image facility, are actually having more impacts. But overall, we do see the value of dealerships coming down.
Okay. And having said that, what are the top 3 tips for a buyer in this climate?
Right. Well, I think if you, as a buyer in the marketplace, I think today to really capture an opportunity, because there is few and far between listings out there, much lower than before, is if you're going to make an offer on a store, make it simple, make it easy with the fewest conditions possible.
Yeah.
That will win over most sellers.
Sure.
Next, I think don't just use the last 3 years to arrive to a value of a business. With COVID factor, I would say you need to do some real homework, look maybe prior to 2020.
Yeah.
So I think your strategy and valuing has got to be different. And the third thing is make sure that when you're running your projections, you're using a more realistic rate of interest from the lenders, because we still don't know if we've reached the full pinnacle of the interest rates in North America.
Yeah.
So if you are going to create a budget and a forecast, try to over-exaggerate on the rates to see if it still pencils well.
Sure, sure. So conversely, what are the 3 tips for sellers in the market?
Yeah, we get asked that a lot. I think if you want to sell your dealership effectively, the very first stage is you need to get a very professional valuation done on your business. The market has changed dramatically, and COVID has impacted that.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is sellers that are selling typically are business owners that have 1 to 4 rooftops in their family's business, and they've never really been in the position of selling. They've always been in the position of buying. So when you are looking at selling, understand what your real walkaway number is going to be should you complete a transaction, and how do you arrive at that number? Because sometimes people's expectations are challenged because they didn't really understand what all the value of their business was. And thirdly, understand your tax implications. There's new tax laws coming through in the United States. You're going to see a lot in the first quarter, and with the House and the Senate also putting some bills through.
Yeah.
I think best advice for a seller is sit down with your external accountants and get some good professional advice on your tax implication.
Sure, sure. When it comes to the price, the final price for a dealership, is it better to wait to find out what the buyer is willing to pay for your group, or is it better to come out with a number to say, here's what we're looking for, for our group?
Great question, Jim. Great question. I think if I was to give any seller advice is yes, sit down, try to understand what is that number that's going to satisfy you, and start there. Be the person that puts the first number on the table, so the sellers, the purchasers, can work their numbers to see whether or not they meet that requirement. So
sure.
That's what I suggest.
Sure. And for somebody in your position, when you're working with a seller, do you often bring a number of different offers, or kind of find the best candidate for that group and say, I've got 3 of them here and I'd like to make the proposal to them about your stores?
Well, I think if you think about the business owner that's selling in these times, they need to feel that if they were going to sell their business, they had looked at as many options as possible. I think that the responsibility of a good broker such as ours is we need to have qualified the buyer. We need to make sure they'll get factory approval. We need to make sure that they've got the manpower to make that execution, and then prepare and present a number of offers on that store. So when the seller makes their final decision, they've made the most informed decision.
Right, right. And confidentiality is of the utmost importance in an environment like this, right? You don't want your current staff to learn that you might be selling the store, right?
And Jim, for most sellers, that is ranked as maybe the number 1, number 2 reason that they are so concerned about making their business available because of the confidentiality, their competing dealers finding out. So if they don't sell, but they could still lose employees. So confidentiality is vital.
Yeah,
Correct.
No question about it. Do you anticipate more Canadian dealer groups buying in the U.S.?
We actually held a very recent a seminar in Canada, inviting all the largest Canadian dealer groups to the seminar to explain to them what it takes to buy in the U.S. I cannot believe the turnout and the level of interest from
Really?
Canadian dealer groups. So yes, I do think that is. Now, people ask me, why are Canadians buying in the United States? Well, there's some very simple reasons. Number one is we only have about 3,000 rooftops in Canada.
Right.
So the opportunities are few and far between.
Yeah.
And we have much more established groups in general in Canada than we do in the United States. As where in the US, there's over 17,000 dealerships, and they tend to be averagely much larger as an entity than the average Canadian dealer.
Yeah.
Finally, Canadian dealer groups have realized that there's a real appetite for inventory, especially through this COVID time. So a lot of Canadian dealers are shipping cars into the United States. Nothing's better than owning a platform in the US for that vehicle to arrive in and actually retail. So do I see it? Yes, I do see that there'll be more Canadian groups looking south. Yes.
Sure. What has the EV evolution or revolution, what kind of a role has that played in the M&A activity out there, if any?
Yeah, well, I think it's beginning to play more. I think some manufacturers have laid out a very good plan to their dealer network. And so those dealers have embraced that EV change. And some manufacturers not so good. They've sent out some mixed messages out there.
That's right.
So I think that the EV is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. So I think unless the manufacturer really gets behind it and communicates well to their dealer body, they may encounter some challenges.
Sure. So tell me, what are the benefits for a U.S. dealer thinking of selling to a Canadian group? I know you mentioned some of them, but...
Yeah, number one is we're great people.
That's right. You are.
But I would say that the confidentiality aspect is fantastic for a U.S. dealer because the Canadian dealer is not a known entity in that marketplace.
Sure.
So their neighbors not finding out. So the confidentiality aspect, I think, is great. Canadians are very conservative buyers. So when they make an offer on a deal, they see that offer through. They've thought it well through and they've planned it well. So I think that Canadians are good buyers that are always good at doing what they say they're going to do. And that's my humble opinion.
Because they're good people.
Because they're good people.
There you go. I don't think anybody will disagree with you on that.
Thank you.
So what is the one key M&A trend, or what's the one key M&A trend that DSMA is watching for in 2023?
Well, again, because of the level of activity out there, one of the things that our team, and we have a very large financial analysis team, we're watching what's happening to these key ratios, what's happening to the trend of net income. We're seeing in the second half of 2022 how the profits have been diminishing. And we want to, so I think what we're going to be tracking very closely is what's actually happening on a monthly basis to a dealer's earnings, because that's going to have a massive impact on their valuation.
Sure. There's many dealers that I talk to in Canada as well as the U.S., and they feel as though it seems to be the consensus out there among dealers. I'm sure I'm not speaking for all the dealers, but many of them will tell me, while gross profits are being affected a little bit right now, and we're starting to negotiate once again on vehicles. It's not sticker price or hit the highway, Mr. Customer, but we are, bringing down prices a little bit. They all seem to feel as though it's not going to go back to where it was prior to COVID hitting, back to 2019, where it was a race to the bottom, where everybody would sell a car at invoice price or in some cases below. They feel as though their OEMs have learned the lesson a little bit, lower the inventory level, maybe a 30, 45-day supply, therefore keep the value of the car for the consumer up what it should be, and also, bring a healthier gross profit to their dealer body. Having said that, do you see that when people are buying stores now, that they feel as though the business probably will never go back to the way that it was, where we just really chased that 17 million SAR or greater to say we want to get the volume out, but dealers aren't making as much money per car?
Yeah, it's a bit of a conflict, isn't it? The dealers that have been selling cars for so many years have always And I like your expression, the race to the bottom on growth, but they were very volume orientated.
Yeah.
And then COVID hit, and all of a sudden, everybody's making extremely high grosses on vehicles, and they love it.
Yeah.
I think if the trend, I don't think it's going to go back to race to the bottom, and I don't think this high gross is going to stay forever either. But if the manufacturers can work with their retailers and work a way that they can control the inventory better as far as availability, that would certainly make the dealership worth a lot more. The only problem is that you have the manufacturers have quotas because they have unions, they have to keep people employed. So I don't know if that's even a realistic expectation.
Sure. I've spoken to a number of dealers that have got 1 or 2 franchises in their group. And they took the opportunity in these last 2 years to sell their stores and pull out of the business. And when I asked them what was the decision there, they said the industry's changing so much that it's really going to be a game for the big players out there. People, companies that have got 25, 35, 100 stores in their chain. And now they felt that this might be a great time to pull out. And have you seen that where some of the smaller dealers have said, hey, you know what, with all of the digital retailing out there and EVs and the fact that you've got these huge companies out there buying up dealerships that we've got to compete against, this might be a great time to put our group on the market to maximize our potential in terms of sale price?
Yes, most dealers, single point dealers, have seen their profit margins erode slowly. Service and parts, they've not been able to stay up with the technology required, either demanded from the manufacturer or even required to conduct business. So yes, I think that what you're finding is that the mom and pop, as I call them, dealers are going, you know what? It's just getting too expensive to employ people, the inventory cost, the land of cost. But not only that, they've never realized such a high value for their business. And they worry, will that value sustain itself or would it go down and never come back? So I think they look at all those factors when they make their decisions.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, Farid Ahmad, founder and CEO of DSMA. For dealers that are watching, these are the kinds of solutions that we want to be bringing you. Be sure, will you be, Farid, at NADA this year?
Yes, I will be.
Okay.
Yes, I will be.
Great. And so stop by and see Farid. I know that you're going to like what you hear. Very, very skilled in what they do at DSMA, helping dealers both in Canada and the U.S. maximize their sale and get the best that they can get. So, Farid, thank you so much for joining us here on CBT News. We very much appreciate it. Love to do a follow-up with you to see how things are moving along in the first quarter.
Anytime, Jim. And I've got to tell you, you've got a very strong following in Canada. The Canadian dealers love CBT, and so your audience are some of the Canadians.
Perhaps they think the C means Canada. I don't know.
There you go. Maybe we can change that.
That's right. Well, whatever it is, we thank you for that. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for watching Inside Automotive with Jim Fitzpatrick. Join the #1 most watched newscast in the automotive industry. CBT News, 10 years strong. Subscribe today.